It was a Monday morning in downtown Manhattan, and the headquarters of Celestial Global Tech buzzed with early week chaos. Elevator doors dinged, heels clicked on polished floors, and the reception phones never stopped ringing. Amid the suited employees and fancy briefcases, a man pushed a janitor's cart down the hallway. His name tag read Mike, and he wore a navy blue janitor uniform, slightly loose on his lean frame. His cap sat low, almost hiding his sharp hazel eyes. No one paid him attention. That was the point. "Watch it, janitor." A man in a tailored gray suit snapped as Mike stepped aside to avoid spilling his mop water. "Sorry, sir," Mike said calmly, bowing his head. But his eyes quietly scanned the man's badge. Richard K., Senior Finance Officer. As Mike turned into the break room, he saw her for the first time. Emily Rivera. She stood by the coffee machine, laughing with another intern. Her energy was warm, untouched by the city's cold ambition. She wore simple clothes, nothing flashy, but her confidence radiated like sunlight in a marble room. Mike slowed his steps, taking in her smile, the kind that didn't just show teeth, but glowed. She glanced his way. Their eyes met. Just briefly. "Good morning," she said kindly. Mike blinked. He hadn't expected that. "Morning," he replied. She smiled again and turned back to her coffee. That was it. A small moment, but it lit something in him. Mike moved quietly through the halls, sweeping, mopping, and observing. He wasn't really there to clean. Not exactly. In truth, Mike Caldwell was the billionaire owner of Celestial Global Tech. But no one in the building knew it. Not even his senior staff. For the past 3 weeks, he had been undercover, testing, watching, learning. He had grown tired of being surrounded by people who only saw his money, his power. His board meetings felt like stage performances. Even in love, his last girlfriend left when he refused to buy her a second condo in Miami. So he made a bold decision: disappear as the CEO and enter his own company as a janitor. He wanted to see who was real, who was kind when they didn't have to be, who would treat him like a person and not a paycheck. Back at the break room, Emily had left a half-used coffee pod, sitting by the machine. Mike noticed her paper cup had a tiny smiley face drawn on the side in red pen. "Who's the new janitor?" Emily asked her friend as they walked past reception. "No idea. Looks kind of lost," the friend said. "Still," Emily added, "he seemed sincere." As the day wore on, Mike cleaned spilled coffee, took out trash, and watched boardroom arguments through glass walls. No one spoke to him, except Emily. By 5:30 p.m., when most employees had left, Mike saw her in the lobby struggling to carry a heavy box of client files. "Need help?" he asked gently. She paused, looked at him. "Actually, yeah, thanks." He picked it up like it weighed nothing. "I'm Emily," she said as they walked together. "I'm Mike." They didn't know it yet, but that small act of kindness was the beginning of something that would shake the entire company, and both their lives. The next morning, Mike arrived early, well before most employees clocked in. He liked the quiet, the stillness before the world started performing. With a simple mop in hand, he made his way through the top floor of the company, where the executives worked. He wasn't supposed to be up there, technically. "Hey," a voice barked. "Janitor, what are you doing here? You people clean the lower levels." Mike turned slowly. It was Travis Benton, the company's vice president of operations, always clad in designer suits and an ego twice as large. "I was told this floor needed sweeping," Mike said, voice calm, respectful. Travis scoffed. "Do it fast, then disappear. Important people are coming in today. And don't let me catch you breathing near the glass conference table." Mike nodded, concealing the slight tightening in his jaw. He watched as Travis strutted down the hallway like he owned the building. Funny. He had no idea the man he just insulted literally did. By 9 a.m., the office was in full swing. Phones rang. Coffee brewed. Laughter echoed from the marketing department. Mike was emptying the bins near the east stairwell when he saw Emily again. She walked past, arms full of reports, her black-rimmed glasses slipping down her nose. Her hair was tied up today, and she wore the same no-nonsense sneakers he'd noticed before. She looked exhausted, but still smiled when she saw him. "Morning, Mike." "Morning," he said, quietly surprised. She paused. You always come early? Beats traffic, he replied with a small shrug. Emily grinned. Smart. She started to walk off, then turned back. You like Chinese food? He blinked. Yeah, I guess. There's a little place down the block. I go there for lunch sometimes. They're affordable. Maybe I'll see you there. Before he could respond, she disappeared into the meeting room. Mike stood frozen for a second, staring at the door she'd just walked through. Not many people talked to him, none with such ease, and definitely not with an invitation. Later that afternoon, Emily sat alone at a small table in the corner of Jen's kitchen, a hidden gem with plastic chairs and the best egg rolls in Manhattan. Thought you might not show, she said when Mike walked in. I clean toilets. Who'd miss me? He joked, eyes twinkling. She laughed. You've got a sense of humor. They talked for the next 20 minutes over noodles and tea. About work. About life. About how she ended up interning in a company where most people didn't even learn your name unless you wore a suit. Mike listened more than he spoke. Every story she told, every subtle glance, every honest laugh, it only deepened something in him. She was real. And for the first time in years, he felt like someone saw him, not what he owned. When they finished eating, Emily reached into her purse, but Mike held up a hand. My treat, he said. Mike, you don't have to. It's fine. I want to. She gave him a look, the kind that made him nervous and warm all at once. You're not like other guys here, she said as they stepped outside. They act like janitors are invisible. Mike just smiled. Maybe that's what they want us to think. They parted ways at the next corner. She waved once before heading into the office. As Mike turned back toward the building, he saw something from across the street that made his stomach turn. Travis Benton was leaning against the building, whispering something into the ear of a woman in heels. Emily. Mike narrowed his eyes. She laughed nervously, then pulled back and walked away briskly. Travis watched her go, a smug look on his face. Mike's jaw clenched. Something was off, and he intended to find out what. Later that week, the company buzzed with preparation for the annual executive cocktail mixer, an exclusive event where only the who's who of the business were invited. That meant suits, champagne, name-dropping, and zero tolerance for anyone who didn't belong. As expected, janitors like Mike were banned from the event. But as always, Mike had other plans. He wasn't there to attend. He was there to watch. He stood in the shadows of the service corridor on the top floor, mop in hand, eyes scanning the glittering room through the slightly cracked door. The music was soft jazz, and the lighting was warm and golden. Everyone wore tailored clothes, talked too loud, and pretended to like each other. And in the middle of it all stood Emily. She looked stunning in a simple navy dress, hair pinned back, nervous but trying to blend in. Mike's chest tightened. She didn't belong in that room, not because she wasn't good enough, but because the people in there didn't deserve her. A tray clinked behind him. You can't stand here, man, a waiter said. I'm just cleaning up. Then hurry. Management's cracking down. No staff in the cocktail area. Mike nodded and stepped away from the door, but not before he caught something that stopped him cold. Travis Benton again. He walked up behind Emily, whispering something into her ear. She shook her head. Mike stepped closer. Come on, Travis said, smiling through clenched teeth. One dance. For old time's sake. I told you no, Emily said sharply, trying to step away. Travis caught her arm, not hard, but firm enough to make her flinch. Mike didn't think. He moved. He pushed through the side door into the edge of the room. Eyes turned. Suits stared. Security shifted uneasily. Let her go, Mike said, his voice low, steady. Travis blinked in surprise, then smirked. What's this? The janitor's in love. Emily's eyes widened. Mike, what the hell are you doing here? Travis demanded. This is a private event. Mike didn't answer. He kept his gaze on Emily. Are you okay? She nodded shakily. Travis stepped between them. Get out before I have you fired. Mike leaned in slightly. Touch her again, and you'll lose more than your job. There was silence. No one moved. For a moment, the music didn't matter. The glasses didn't clink. Everyone just watched. Then Emily spoke. He's not the problem, Travis. You are. She turned and walked out of the room, head held high. Mike followed, not saying a word. Down the hall, back in the quiet, Mike paused. You didn't have to do that, Emily said softly. Yes, he replied. I did. She looked up at him, truly looked. Why? Mike hesitated, then said, because I know what it feels like to be treated like you don't matter. She stared at him a long time. You're not who I thought you were. Neither are you, he said with a faint smile. For the rest of the night, she didn't return to the party, and he didn't leave her side. But somewhere in the crowd, Travis watched them from the shadows, face tight, jaw clenched. He didn't like to lose. And he wasn't done yet. The rain tapped softly against the windows as the office slowly emptied for the weekend. The air was filled with the scent of lemon polish and freshly brewed coffee left untouched on a conference table. Mike stood by the janitor's closet, pretending to refill a mop bucket. But in truth, he was watching the hallway where Emily gathered her things, alone in the quiet space. She didn't know he was there, at least not yet. She hesitated, then sat on the bench near the hallway window, her bag untouched beside her. Her shoulders sank, like the day had finally worn her down. Mike stepped forward. You okay? She looked up, startled, but then gave a tired smile. Just tired. Want to talk about it? She hesitated, and then she nodded. They ended up sitting on that hallway bench, her still in her business heels, him still in his janitor's shirt. But for the first time, there were no titles between them. Just two people. You were right about Travis, she said softly, eyes focused on the rain outside. I should have listened. You weren't wrong, Mike said. You just believed in the wrong person. Emily gave a half laugh. Believing in the wrong person is kind of a theme in my life. He didn't push. He just waited. She drew in a breath, then let the truth slip out slowly. My mom left when I was 6. Said she couldn't do the wife and mother thing anymore. Just walked out. My dad raised me, but he was always chasing money, deals, women, everything except me. Mike's heart tightened. Emily continued, voice barely above a whisper. He once told me emotions are a luxury, that if I ever wanted to survive in the real world, I'd have to kill mine. She looked at Mike now, really looked. But I see the way you act around people. Quiet, kind, present. Like you still have something inside you. I lost things too, Mike said after a pause. People. Trust. My sense of direction. But somewhere along the way I realized, the world doesn't need more coldness. It needs someone who still gives a damn. She blinked, trying not to cry. You're not just a janitor, are you? He smiled softly. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. Maybe it doesn't matter. They sat in silence. Then Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a small plastic container. I packed extra tonight. Leftovers. She held it out. Mike took it gently. You're sharing your leftovers with the janitor? No, she said. I'm sharing dinner with someone who actually listens. The warmth in that moment couldn't be faked. For the first time, Emily didn't feel like the assistant clawing her way up a corporate ladder. And Mike didn't feel like a man hiding behind a mop. They were just two people. Talking. Listening. Healing. But down the hallway, Travis stood by a door slightly ajar, watching again, eyes narrow, fists clenched. He didn't like what he saw, and he was about to make sure this friendship never became anything more. By Monday morning, things had shifted at the firm, subtly, but noticeably. Emily walked into the break room and found 2 cups of coffee waiting, one with her name written on it and one labeled Janitor Romeo. She blinked, confused. A few whispers trailed from behind her as she walked the hall. Normally, she was invisible outside meetings. But today, people stared a little too long. Smirked when she passed. Mike noticed it too. When he arrived with his cleaning cart near the lobby, 2 interns burst into laughter as he walked by. What's the punchline? He asked calmly. One of them held up their phone, chuckling. You haven't seen it? Oh man. He turned the screen toward Mike. It was a photo of Mike and Emily sitting together in the hallway on Friday. The container of leftovers between them. The caption read, From boardroom to broom closet, Emily's got a type. Underneath it, Laughing emojis, gifs of Cinderella's mice, and a dozen anonymous comments ripping them both apart. Mike's chest tightened. Not for himself. For her. He left the cart and went straight to the server room, the one place in the building with no cameras, no traffic. Emily was already there, waiting. She held her phone with trembling hands, her eyes red. "Travis did this," she said. "He must have taken that photo." Mike nodded slowly. "He's jealous. He sees you connecting with someone outside his control." "He's petty," she spat. "And cruel." She looked at Mike, and something in her cracked. "Why don't I care what they say?" she whispered. "Why am I more upset that it might scare you away?" Mike stepped closer. "Because you're not fake like the rest of them, and you're finally seeing the world for what it really is." "I don't want you to walk away, Mike." "I won't." They stood there, eyes locked. But suddenly, the server room door burst open. Travis, with a smug, knowing look on his face. Well, romantic little IT rendezvous. Cute. Emily's spine stiffened. "What do you want, Travis?" "Oh, I already have it," he said, waving his phone. "Company gossip, scandal. You think the board's going to ignore a manager sneaking around with janitorial staff?" Mike didn't flinch. "You're wasting your energy." But Travis grinned. "Am I?" Because I dug a little deeper. Mike isn't even listed on our official payroll. No HR file. No social. No employment record. Isn't that strange? Emily's face paled. Mike stayed calm, but inside, his pulse surged. Travis leaned in closer. "Who are you really?" Mike met his gaze head-on. "You'll find out soon enough. But when you do, you better pray you treated me with decency." Travis's grin faltered for a split second, but recovered. "I'll find out, Janitor. And when I do, I'll ruin you." He stormed off, slamming the door. Emily turned to Mike. "What's he talking about? Why aren't you on payroll?" Mike was quiet for a beat. Then he looked at her. "You're not the only one hiding from a past." The room fell still. Everything had changed. And now, both Emily and Mike were walking a tightrope between truth and survival. The city skyline burned gold as dusk draped itself across the glass walls of the building. Inside the janitor's closet, converted to Mike's storage office, Emily stood like she was holding her breath. Her words were gentle, but pointed. "Mike, I need to know who you are." Mike set down the spray bottle he'd been pretending to organize. He ran a hand through his hair and looked at her, eyes tired but soft. "You remember how I said people see what they want to see?" he asked. Emily nodded. "I used to be on that side of the glass," he said, nodding toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. "Corner office. Staff meetings. Conference calls with billionaires. I didn't clean floors, I owned them." Emily's brows lifted, but she didn't interrupt. "I built a company from scratch when I was 25. Clean tech, ironic, huh? Solar, renewable energy. It was hot. Too hot. Venture capitalists flooded us with money. We scaled too fast. Got too big." His jaw tightened. "And then I got betrayed. My co-founder, my best friend since high school, sold out my share behind my back. Falsified my signature on the board vote. I lost everything. The money. The name. Even my patents." Emily's hand went to her mouth. You were that Michael Carter? Of Green Thrive Energy." Mike nodded. "You remember the headlines. The scandal. The leadership collapse narrative. They made me out to be the reckless visionary who couldn't manage money. But I was never the one who lied." He looked away for a moment. "After the media storm, I vanished. Took what little I had left and started again. Quietly. I invested in a new AI tech startup. I worked in different places under different names. But recently, I came back. I needed to know something." "What?" she asked softly. Mike's voice dropped. "Who still sees me when there's nothing flashy around me? No titles. No power. No prestige." He looked at her, eyes searching. "And you did." Emily didn't speak for a moment. The truth settled between them like a storm cloud breaking. Then she took a step closer. "I knew there was something about you. The way you carried yourself. You weren't like the others. You listened. You noticed people. You weren't performing." He chuckled sadly. Well, I've been performing Janitor pretty well. She smiled gently. Then her voice turned quiet again. You could have told me sooner. I wanted to, he said, but I needed to see who you were when you thought I was nobody. Emily reached out and took his hand. I'm nobody to most of this company. Just a manager with decent numbers. But you saw me too. Silence stretched. Then she asked, what now? Mike sighed. Travis knows something's up. He's going to dig. I need to leave before he blows this place up just to feel important. No, she said firmly. We face this. He blinked. You're not alone anymore, she added. You don't need to run. Mike's throat tightened. Of all the battles he had fought, this moment felt like the most fragile and the most sacred. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. You won't, Emily said, stepping closer. Because I never loved the title. I love the man who picked up a mop to find something real. The following morning, the air inside the corporate tower was unusually tense. Whispers floated through cubicles like static. Something was up. At 9 a.m. sharp, an all-hands meeting was announced, mandatory. Emily sat at the back of the large boardroom, flanked by analysts and floor managers, clutching her tablet like it was armor. Travis, the operations director, stood confidently at the front. His slick back hair glinted under the LED lights. He flashed his classic wolfish grin. I know this is last minute, he began. But there are matters of concern we need to address, specifically about unauthorized access to sensitive areas and a certain janitor. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. Mike stood by the back wall in his usual blue coveralls, mop handle resting in one hand. Travis gestured to security guards near the door. Bring him forward. 2 guards approached Mike. Emily stood up immediately. He's done nothing wrong. Travis raised a hand. Miss Owens, please let us handle this professionally. Mike didn't resist. He walked calmly to the center of the room, then stood beside Travis, completely composed. Michael Carter, Travis said loudly, reading from a printed sheet. Also known as Mike Evans, former CEO of Green Thrive Energy. Vanished in the midst of financial scandal. Now mopping our floors. Quite the twist, isn't it? Shocked gasps. Mike looked at Travis, unfazed. You went through my files, he asked. Travis shrugged. I had my suspicions. You were too well-spoken, too precise. And our dear Emily here seemed a bit too cozy with you. So I pulled some strings. He turned to the crowd. This man is a fraud. He infiltrated our company under false identity. I say we call the press. Let the world know we've been deceived. Emily stepped forward. You're not exposing a fraud, she said. You're exposing your insecurity. Travis spun around, stunned. Excuse me. Mike took a slow step forward. I didn't come here to deceive anyone, he said clearly. I came to learn, to see the world without filters. To find people who treat others based on character, not clout. He turned to the stunned crowd. And I found that here. I found her. He nodded at Emily. Now that I've been outed, I'll say this plainly. I am Michael Carter. I lost my last company because I trusted the wrong people. But I've been rebuilding. I recently became the majority shareholder of an AI automation startup, Novacog. And as of last week, Novacog completed its acquisition of this company's parent group. Another gasp. Travis's smirk evaporated. Mike pulled a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to Travis. That's the acquisition agreement. Effective immediately. Travis's hands trembled. You what? Mike turned to the crowd. As of today, I'm the new chairman. And Travis, your services are no longer required. Security stepped forward again, this time toward Travis. The room erupted in murmurs and awe. Emily blinked, stunned. Mike looked at her. I didn't want it to go down like this, he said quietly. But when people try to hurt the ones I care about, I show them who I really am. Travis shouted in protest as he was escorted out, but no one listened. The boardroom fell silent once more. Emily walked up to Mike, eyes wide. So, you really own the company now? Mike smiled. Yeah. But the title still doesn't matter. Not if I don't use it for something good. She smiled back, lips trembling. So what do we do now? We build something better, he said, taking her hand. The next day, the office felt different. People glanced at Mike with newfound awe, whispers trailing him like perfume. They now knew who he was, not a janitor, but a billionaire. The man who had just bought their company. He hated it. The masks had come back on. Everyone who once ignored him now smiled too wide. Even the barista in the lobby, who once forgot his order, offered him free lattes. But the only face he wanted to see, the only one who had looked at him the same way every day, was Emily's. But Emily wasn't in her usual spot that morning. He found her on the rooftop, sitting on a bench beside the community garden she had helped start. She looked up, slightly startled, then smiled. "Guess the rumors are true," she said, her voice soft. "You own everything now." Mike sat beside her. "I never wanted to own this. I wanted to find something real." Emily stared at the horizon, the city stretching far below. "Well, you did," she whispered. "But now that the masks are off, what happens next?" Before Mike could answer, his phone buzzed. A message. From Olivia Carter. "We need to talk. Urgent. Meet me at the St. Regis. Suite 1302. He sighed. Olivia, his ex-fiancée. A name that still stung like an old wound. Emily caught the change in his face. "Everything okay?" "It's someone from before," he said honestly. "I should probably deal with it, but I'll be back." She gave a faint nod, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Underscore 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 underscore. 30 minutes later, Mike stepped into the luxurious penthouse suite. Olivia sat in a tailored white suit, legs crossed, sipping sparkling water. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like the old life he'd walked away from. "You clean up well," she said, standing. He didn't smile. "What do you want, Olivia?" She walked closer. "I made a mistake, Mike. When you lost everything, I panicked. I listened to people who told me you'd never recover. But now look at you." She placed a hand on his chest. "I was wrong, and I want to fix it. You're back where you belong, and so am I." He stepped back. "You want me now that I've got money again?" "No," she insisted. "I want us. We were good together, Mike. We can be better now. I've already made arrangements. We can fly to Santorini this weekend, just like we planned before the crash." She held out a set of keys. "This is your old condo. I bought it back. Come home, Mike." He stared at the keys, the sweeter eyes. Once, this was his world. Now it felt cold. "I'm not the same man," he said quietly. "You're better now," she replied. "No," he said firmly. "I was better when I had nothing and still believed in people." He turned to leave. "Is this because of her?" Olivia snapped. He looked over his shoulder. "Yes, because when I was just a janitor, she treated me like a human being. You treated me like an investment." And with that, he walked out. Underscore 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 underscore. He returned to the office rooftop, just as the sun began to dip. Emily sat alone, arms wrapped around herself. "You came back," she said. "I told you I would," Mike replied, walking toward her. She stood, her eyes shining. "You didn't choose her. I chose you before I even knew what I had to lose." They stood in silence for a moment, the wind teasing their hair. "I was afraid," Emily admitted, "that the money, the power, would change everything." "It almost did," he whispered. "But then I remembered why I started this whole journey. To find someone real." Her fingers found his. "I'm still here," she said. And with that, they stood together under the falling light. Two people who had seen the worst in others, but found the best in each other. The next day, the entire company buzzed with one word: press conference. An email had gone out that morning, inviting all staff to gather in the main lobby by noon. Most assumed it was to announce layoffs or restructuring, the typical billionaire move. Whispers rippled across desks. But Emily wasn't whispering. She sat at her usual cubicle, staring at her computer, wondering if this was her last day. Mike hadn't texted that morning. Was it all just a dream? At 11:57 a.m., the elevator dinged. The crowd turned. Mike stepped out, no longer in his janitor uniform, but in a crisp gray suit that still managed to look modest. He didn't wear flashy watches or bring a publicist. He simply walked to the front with quiet dignity. Behind him, the company's executive board stood like obedient statues. Emily shrank back, unsure whether to watch or leave. Mike raised a hand. "Thank you all for coming. I won't take much of your time," he began. His voice was calm, honest. "Some of you knew me as the janitor. Some of you ignored me completely. That's okay, because I wasn't here to test you." A pause. "I was here to learn." The crowd murmured. "I've spent my life around polished people, suits, yachts, press releases. But none of it taught me what I learned while sweeping floors. Real character hides in plain sight. Kindness doesn't wear designer clothes." He looked toward the back, straight at Emily. "And love, it's not impressed by bank accounts. It's drawn to truth." Several heads turned. Emily's face flushed red. Mike continued. "This company isn't going to be restructured. No one's losing their job. In fact, I'm promoting someone today." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded paper, and handed it to one of the VPs beside him. "This is our new Director of Community Initiatives," he announced. "A role that will help us fund and build local programs for underserved neighborhoods." People leaned in. Mike smiled. "Please congratulate Emily Sanders." The crowd gasped. Emily stood frozen. Her hands trembled. "Me," she whispered. "Yes, you," Mike said, stepping off the platform and walking through the crowd toward her. "You reminded me that wealth means nothing without purpose." She took the paper slowly, still shaking. "But I don't. I'm not even qualified." "You are," he said, "because you lead with empathy. And that's the first thing this company needs more of." Applause started slow, then rose like a wave. People clapped, not because of status, but because something real had just happened. Emily's eyes welled up. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I want to build a future with someone who believed in me when I had nothing," he said. "And because you made me believe in myself again." A few people in the crowd sniffled. Even the hardened executives looked slightly humbled. As the applause faded, Mike took Emily's hand. "I have one more announcement," he said, "but I'll save that for tonight. Underscore 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 underscore. Later that evening, as the city lights blinked to life, Mike and Emily stood on a rooftop garden overlooking the skyline. It was the same rooftop where they'd first spoken, quiet, simple, and real. "I can't believe what you did today," Emily whispered. "I didn't do it for the company," he replied. "I did it for us." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "I know this started with a disguise," he said, "but nothing I feel for you is pretend." He opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant diamond ring. "Emily Sanders, will you marry me?" She blinked, tears forming instantly. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring on her finger. They embraced under the stars, two hearts that had weathered doubt, deception, and fear, and found something rare in the world of wealth. Something true. 3 months later, the garden behind Mike's private estate glowed under strings of warm fairy lights. White chairs lined the cobbled aisle, filled with guests who once had no idea who he really was. Flowers swayed gently in the breeze, and soft jazz played in the background. It was their wedding day. And not just any wedding, a celebration of something far deeper than love alone. It was a ceremony rooted in everything they'd fought for: dignity, faith, and second chances. Emily stood at the top of the aisle in a flowing ivory dress, simple but stunning, her hair pinned up with a flower comb. She held her father's arm, eyes locked on Mike, who waited at the altar in a navy blue suit, not flashy, just elegant. He didn't need the world's approval anymore. He had hers. As she walked slowly down the aisle, guests smiled. Some recognized her from the press conference. Others had seen the viral headlines. Billionaire Janitor's real identity shocks company, then promotes the only one who treated him like a human. It was everywhere, but for Mike and Emily, this wasn't about attention. This was about honoring a quiet truth between two souls. The vows were personal. Mike took her hands. You saw me when no one else did. When I had nothing. You didn't look away. You asked how I was doing. That saved me. Emily smiled through tears. You showed me what real love is. Not money, not power, but choosing each other every single day, no matter what we have. They sealed their vows with a kiss. Applause rang out, but nothing louder than the beating in their own hearts. Later that night, the couple slipped away from the crowd. Out on the same rooftop where they once talked about dreams, they stood barefoot, laughing with wine glasses in hand. Mike turned to her. You know, I used to think love was a transaction. Give and get. I didn't realize the right person just gives. Emily leaned on his shoulder. I used to think I had to be small to survive in this world, but you taught me that you don't need to be loud to be powerful. They watched the stars. No more secrets. No more disguises. No more proving themselves to anyone. Mike had built companies. He had owned penthouses and traveled first class. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to standing barefoot on a rooftop with a woman who loved him when he was just a janitor with a mop and a dream. 1 year later, Mike's new charity, The Human Project, opened centers across 5 cities. They provided job training, mentorship, and housing for people coming out of hard times. At the ribbon cutting of the first center, Mike stepped up to the mic with Emily at his side. I once swept floors to understand the world, he said. Now I'm building a world where no one is invisible. Cameras flashed, but it wasn't the billionaire they captured. It was a man who had walked through fire and found love waiting at the other side. Moral of the story? True love doesn't care about money or titles. It's about who stands by you when you have nothing and stays when you finally have everything.